Okay, well, where were we? Client-centered. I actually, what's the last word you heard from me?
Client-centered.
Client-centered.
Client-centered instruction, right. Yeah, clever, clever.
Oh, God.
One of the things our faculty have been challenged by is being client-centered. Generally, they're content-centered, as you know, and I may have said. How many of you work in education, K-12 or higher ed or technical college, trainers, developers in your environments? So most of you have a role in that. And especially in higher centered, you tend to be pretty disciplinary locused or focused. It's all about the information, the material, not about the learner or instructor. And while we've made a lot of strides in K-12 education to try to make student-centered instruction, that hasn't been the case in higher ed. And so our faculty come on campus, or they come on our program, and we have a very interdisciplinary faculty. Some are educational technologists. Others are network and security assurance specialists, and they work in our College of Information Systems. Others even from liberal arts who are doing multimedia in our program. So they come content-centered instead of client-centered, and it's been a challenge to get them to think over the hundreds of contacts they'll have with our students in their class that each contact has to be a high-quality experience. And that eludes some of our folks. And so this again supports the notion that it's the pedagogy, it's the process that continues to be problematic above all things. Now, besides being client-centered, there are new roles in assessment that traditional classroom experiences defy. And what does that mean? Well, when you have an environment where you're looking at the interactions of participants, and you're looking at how they talk and how they work with each other, that's a valued experience. How do you assess that? How do you do that? Well, you know how your instructors assess that, and they've been a long time thinking through that. How does that look? How do we quantify it? How do we make sense of it? How does it turn out to be an A, B, or a C, or an F, or something like that? But besides those end-of-the-course grades, what we've tried to look at are formative assessment processes, which probably may not get a grade, but require from the instructor some notion of feedback. And that might be in the context of an online text chat, or it might be if the instructor uses a CUCME or other conference-based desktop web environment interaction device. How do you make sense of that? How do you assess that? We've tried to move to performance assessments, and that again is a difficulty for our faculty. What performances at a distance do you evaluate or assess to help determine how well the student's done in class? Another dimension that our faculty have struggled with is developing an online interface. Since most of our courses are web-based, and then there's a a large group of tools that they append to their websites to help students interact, they still have to remember that they have to put the kind of visuals, the page design, the multimedia in a way that engages the students. We're lucky at this. All of our faculty pretty technologically literate, and so they develop their own web pages. We've resisted using a CMS. We don't know how much longer we can get away with that. CMS, Course Management System, WebCT, Blackboard. You guys are familiar with those. We prefer to use our own pages that we could put our media, develop our instruction on, and move our students through the cycle of learning, whether it's instructional design as a course or evaluating educational outcomes or whatever it is. And so they've been pretty good at this, but it's not been without some mistakes in determining what those interfaces look like. how they're used, how deep does a student have to go for information. And my guess is that some of you there have a background in web development, and so you think constantly about what makes good web interactivity when you just have pictures and words to work with. But that continues to be a challenge in higher education. Now there's this wonderful capacity, and this is what's really spawned the evolution of distance learning, the capacity of computer-mediated communication. How is it that we can work together, collaborate, interact when we live great distances away? And there are synchronous and asynchronous modes. You've discussed those. They're not without each of them. They're challenges or great opportunities. But how many of these are good use? I mean, do you use them all? How do you do it? And what we've tried to encourage in our faculty is message redundancy. And when I worked in Chicago, I worked with a great guy named Jim Levin, who is at the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana. And Jim talks about this notion of message redundancy in online learning. And he says when you tell your students there's an assignment due next Monday at 5 o'clock, you probably get it in an email. You send it in an email to them. You put it on the course webpage where they know. You probably put it on the syllabus where they find out that all assignments are due by 5 o'clock on the day identified. This redundancy of message, putting information that repeats itself in different ways and at different points, is key. It is at the very bottom of one of the great instructional design principles for online learning. And taking this notion of message redundancy, we've been able to circumvent some problems that I think other programs, courses, and institutions have had who've not been so good at that, or who might be just emerging with their programs. I am positive that Nova does a wonderful job with that. Now, there is some notion that an online faculty has to be a technologist. Do I believe that the technology can be completely transparent to the learner and to the instructor? I'm one of the folks that says no, that there has to be a certain amount of technology competency on the part of both the learner, but more so the instructor, to be able to make good course development, good instructional, good distance education. And so I find myself, and I know that our other faculty have instructed students on how to make audio files, manage web chats, whether they're synchronous text-based or whether they're asynchronous on a web board or bulletin board or something like that. Using tools like NetMeeting, which is Microsoft's freeware, how to stream real video or audio, accessing scripting codes to get their programs to do unique things. For some of you, information science or computer science degree programs, you do that in your sleep. But for the rest of us, that's taken a real shift in skill sets. And I still find myself answering questions because it is immensely easier for me to work with these students and answer these questions than to send them to the help desk, especially when we have on-demand needs, needing the right information right at the right time to continue on, to continue that communication with the class. And how does a faculty become all these things? Assessment specialist, web development specialist, technical support agent, and plus content specialist. It's not easy. I'm absolutely sure it takes more than 2 or 3 days training with a course management system in WebCT to do that, to be a good experience. It takes some practice, and there are going to be mistakes. But if you're patient and you have some good institutional support, that can work well. Now, besides that, there's the role of evaluation, and our faculty have taken on huge new roles in formatively and summatively evaluating their courses, their teaching, to the point of administering their own surveys their own online components to find out from students how they've done, and they can do that anonymously. So besides institutional evaluation activities, there are individual evaluation activities that go on, and our instructors are asking some of these things that mirror traditional course evaluation protocol in any institution, about the applicability of course activities, the relevancy of them, and that's important information to know. But how was the technology? The technology that I use, net meeting, web board, See You, See Me, how did that work? And then there's this, still the standard is the traditional course environment. And I'm guilty, if you call it that, or I am as opportunistic, as you call it that, as saying still distance education has the standard of the traditional environment to meet. And so I say, well, did the breadth of this online course meet the breadth of a traditional course? Would you say, estimate for me? Or the depth of the course? And here I just show it to you on a continuum of 1 to 7. That's the scale I use. The critical thinking. And as you see, and here's one on the effort, as you see, the courses, the traditional to the online course matches up pretty well. Well, that's consistent with the research we see on online teaching, technology-based course development and delivery. Did I have this information? Does it validate what I'm doing? Possibly, but that in itself is not sufficient. Now, as we wind down, I think the big point I need to make is that by and large, the biggest challenges haven't been technical. They haven't been institutional for a university like Nova or like DSU or like Michigan, because every university has dived into this environment at some level, some way or another. And it generally emerged from their correspondence courses that were paper and pencil based. And this was a natural transition. And all those pieces are in place. It's been the individual faculty in our program, and I'm guessing, and I'm quite sure, talking with my colleagues in other institutions, it's been the individual faculty that has presented the most challenges. So when the dean asks a faculty to consider teaching an online course, their questions may be about pay, their questions may be about recognition and promotion, or however those things fit. But by and large, as soon as the faculty dives in, they're going to be about the process of developing a suitable course experience in an online environment. And they'll find they're woefully inadequate because they lack technological skills, personal technological skills, process skills in terms of encouraging interaction. In an online course, you respond to 25 students. In a traditional course, you have 1 or 2 students whose hands are raised.